The big newsmaker this evening, EY Global CEO Carmine Di Sibio, says India is on top of the list for global investors. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, he said there is huge appetite to invest in India and identified geopolitics as the biggest risk to global growth.
India is probably top of the list for global investors in terms of where to invest, in the next few years or even more than that. And a lot of it has to do with, obviously, everything India has going for it. Obviously, the most obvious thing is demographics, but it's not only that. It's entrepreneurship. It's frankly, the ability for business to flourish. There's great entrepreneurship in India around tech, and I think there will be more and more around AI as well. So that's something that I think, India's poised to do more in. And I could tell you a little bit about what we're doing. But it's, so consumer tech, I think. Now, the sector that I think India has a great opportunity in is manufacturing. That's something that obviously India can capitalize in terms of what's happening, in terms of people moving their supply chains away from China. I think all companies today are looking at their China operations, and number one, making sure that data that's produced in China stays in China. That's important. It's important to the Chinese regulators. So we have all our clients looking at, what technology they're using in China, what data they're producing in China, and this is important to both sides. And so that's number one. Number two, all our clients are going down the route of more of what's produced in China is sold in China. What's produced elsewhere is sold elsewhere. So those, I would say, are two rules of thumb. And then, I do think the world wants to see where China is going from a future perspective. I think their economy has slowed, and they're still kind of coming out of the COVID period. And then there's going to be, right now, I would say, there's acceptance to invest in China in certain sectors, certainly not in tech, and certainly not in any kind of sector that could have a geopolitical consequence.
We've gotten used to dealing with different kinds of risks, especially through the course of the pandemic, whether it's rates or inflation, and geopolitics, which really is emerging as perhaps the big risk. I mean, that's what Jamie Dimon said when he spoke to me a couple of weeks ago here in India. How are you reading that, and how are CEOs now starting to factor that into plans? It's no longer just China or Russia, Ukraine. You now have the Middle East to factor in.
That's a good question, and it is now we always talk about what are the top three things CEOs are worried about. Geopolitics now is at the top of the list, and I think people are looking at their supply chains. They're looking at who they're dealing with. The whole friend-shoring concept is out there, and they want to make sure that wherever they're investing, that they're going to be able to have a government that's friendly with their home government. And I think that's important. And that's something that, the West right now, Europe, the U.S. is pretty aligned. Certain countries in the Middle East are aligned. I think India is aligned. And then I think others are not in that fold. So it's a worry. What's going on in terms of Israel and Palestine is just really incredibly sad. Incredibly sad in terms of what's happened. This is something that, is not good for anyone.
No, and unexpected.
Totally unexpected. And it's something that, no one wants to take sides on things, but when one side does something unexpected and that horrible, it's hard not to take sides.
No, absolutely.